Okay, cool. Well, all right, welcome in, folks. Welcome, Ricky and Tamika. We're gonna give it just a couple of minutes here before we get started so other people have time to join, but thanks for being here, and we'll probably kick it off in 2 or 3 minutes once we give folks a couple more minutes to join the Zoom room today. All right, and welcome, Carlin. If anyone wants to go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat, feel free while we wait for more folks to join us before kicking off the training today. But feel free to go ahead, maybe just do your name and where you're located, and maybe if you're part of an organization in the chat, feel free to share that with the group. All right, let's give it one more minute and then I'll go ahead and start us off just with some kind of basic introductory stuff while other folks join. And it looks like, do you guys see that, the blue on the screen? It looks like there's like a pen tool maybe. I'm not really sure what that is.
Oh, it's gone now.
Okay, oh, I see it gone too. Perfect. No big deal either way. Cool. Well, let's go ahead and start off. I have just some brief introductory slides that we're going to go through while more people jump into the training for today. So welcome all. This is our Sustaining Ourselves in Our Movement training with Kimberly and Carlton today. So first off, I'm just going to share a little bit about Midwest BDC. So Midwest BDC is a regional organization. We focus on the states of Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Ohio, and Wisconsin. We have members from all of those different states, and our mission is to develop and implement equitable strategies to achieve zero emissions from the Midwestern building sector by 2050. And we really focus on that equitable strategies piece, which for us is a lot of bottom-up organizing and advocacy at the local level, which kind of goes into the presentation today. And real quickly, since I don't want to take up too much time, I'm just going to read through our community norms. So these are the norms that we ask everyone adhere to and follow in our meeting spaces. And they are: remember our why, focus on the work, notice intent, lean towards impact, use I statements, practice self-awareness, stop and witness, assume good intentions, listen for understanding, not to respond, wait, why am I talking, why aren't I talking, practice active listening, remember that everyone's a teacher and everyone's a learner, share responsibility for keeping to the norms, do not dominate meetings for personal or organizational self-interest, respect meeting facilitators, adhere to speak next indicators, show up in your authentic self, speak to the whole group, minimize jargon and explain terms when you're asked, and participate and lean into discomfort. And then the one other note I wanted to share here is that everyone should feel free to use the chat. So if you have any questions during the presentation today, please feel free to put those in the chat, or you can use that raise hand function on Zoom to come off mute and ask our presenters yourselves. I think we're going to have a pretty intimate, smaller group today. We want this to be really conversational and just useful for everybody. So feel free to come off camera, come off mute and really engage while we have this time together today. All right, and with that said, a little bit about today's training. So this training will explore how we can develop emotional intelligence and collaboration, all while caring for ourselves and advancing the movements and missions we're a part of. We will learn how to identify our gifts and the gifts of others and how to best work together. Then we will dive into defining and achieving success, both individually and collaboratively. I'm going to introduce our presenters today before I turn it over to them. So with us is Reverend Kimberly Koczan of Wisdom's Well. She is a spiritual guide, clergy person, and facilitator of Kingian nonviolence trainings. She earned a Master's of Divinity and is an Environmental Leadership Program Senior Fellow, a member of Midwest BDC, and has served many years on the board with Interfaith Power and Light, now Faith in Place. She weaves her background in environmental education, social work, ministry, into being an advocate for holistic health of people and planet. Kimberly lives in Kikionga, now called Fort Wayne, Indiana, and is passionate about food justice and sustainable food systems. Also co-presenting with Kimberly today, we have Carlton D. Jones. Carlton is a business professional with over 40 years of business experience and a degree in business management from Alabama State University. Carlton has been and is still very committed to helping others throughout his life. This comes from his strong belief in God. Carlton has co-founded Hope for America, HFA, a nonprofit. As a career navigator, Carlton recently developed the CarNav Group, which promotes a career pipeline for workforce development and education as a means for community improvement. Carlton and the CarNav Group. I think you're muted. I just made you a co-host, so you should be able to unmute yourself now. And you will see improvements in the communities they live in.
Oh, good.
And with that,
do we
I'm
wanna,
going to turn it over to Kimberly and Carlton to take us
yes,
through this training today. So there's one guest in the waiting room right now. I was thinking we would leave that until it starts at 2, just so we can kind of get...
If you can either look in your camera. Do you mind turning off the recording for a minute? And then reflection, and just notice that you showed up today. And then thank yourself for making this time, because you are so worth taking this time to nurture and be sustained and filled up. So thank you to you, and I'm excited that we'll get to have a nice intimate conversation, and also welcome people who might be finding this resource later on the Midwest Building Decarbonization site, and to look for some inner resources and some ways to keep building the environmental movement sustainably. To start us off, I wanted to let you know that at Midwest Building Decarbonization, we're working on equity, sustainability, healthy indoor spaces, and visionary leadership. And today, we're talking about renewable energy that's within us, tapping into our essence and practices that are sustaining to you and your community. And so by way of introducing yourself, I saw a couple of intros in the chat, but I invite you to either come off the mic or share in the chat a way that you renew your energy in your free time. So think about some way that you renew yourself, activities, interests that bring you peace or refreshment. Anyone want to share out loud? I can start us with, for me, I love to go someplace with water. So either looking at the water is a source of peacefulness for me, or being in the water is oftentimes energizing for me. Anyone else? And welcome.
Kimberly, I put mine in the chat, but similarly, just like being out in nature always really energizes me.
Thank you.
I like to co-sign. I'm in my free time when I enjoy golfing. And golfing is one of those things you get out there and it's beautiful scenery, have fresh air, intertwine with people, and you intertwine with playing a game that you really compete against yourself in the golf course. So I enjoy that time and I look forward to it.
Love it. Thank you. And then let's see, I have others offering reflections. Being in nature, Maggie says, welcome to, and Lisa mentions, the water is one of my favorite energizing activities, sitting by it, in it, and on it. I'm with you. Okay. Anyone else? Well, as you think about things, and that's some of what we're going to be doing today, feel free to tap into those places that restore and refresh you, because that's going to be a part of our own sustainability. Handing it over to Carlton as we look at 4 keys to success.
Well, thank you, Kimberly. Hopefully everybody can hear me well. We started down this journey of talking about sustaining yourself and also sustaining our mission or our movement. And when we started thinking and talking about that, I shared with Kimberly and others at Midwest that our 4 goals for success or 4 steps for success was truly represent, sustainability for anybody to be successful. And Kimberly and the other ones, especially Marnice, say, I really believe that that's a good backbone for us to use for sustainability in ourselves and also for our movement. So there are the 4 keys that we use inside the CarNav Group when we work with individuals for planning careers. But at the same time, these are the type of keys that you can be successful in sustaining yourself in anything you do. Key 1, who am I? Which you will hear a lot more about that from Kimberly as we go through, because as I share with her, and I see a lot of my teammates that's on this call, and I appreciate you all coming out, taking this time to share with us. The first and fourth thing we know about a person being successful is understand themselves. And digging deep into yourself is truly what you'll hear more from Kimberly as we go on about how important it is to know who you are. And from there, where am I going? You can get a grip on yourself, but then you got to have some direction. And that direction is really important for you to be successful in life. And once you get some direction, okay, it's a lot of different pathways to get there. So you got to determine, how do I really get there for where I want to go to? And ultimately, key 4, you talk about what does it cost? We'll dig into that key 4 because naturally people think about dollars and cents when you talk about costs. But at the end of the day, there's some more price you have to pay to be successful and to be sustainable. So I want you to kind of keep this in mind, that we talk about being successful and being sustainable at the same time. So I'm going to pass it on to Kimberly as we dive off into that first key, who am I?
Wonderful, thank you. I love this framework, and so it's good to see that several of you in the room are a part of building this into other people, young adults, people of any age, and it's never, we're all in a process of lifelong learning. So whether we're teachers and leaders or people who work on a team or are just starting out, this is work that we keep doing. And so wanted to look at some tools and practices. So you've already been thinking about just how do you restore your soul, how do you get refreshed or find your centering. But wanted to take a moment for us to actually do a short centering meditation. And so I invite you to sit or stand in your space, kind of go beyond the screen space. If you want, you can close your eyes or gaze softly. I like to sometimes look out the window and join me for a moment of centering. Start by noticing our body. Thank you. Thanks for joining that meditation. If you're listening to the recording, you're most welcome to pause and take space to be centered in this space as well. Next slide, Maggie. As we're going to dig into more in a little bit, we start with our centering, our vision, and notice our path to success. And Carlton's going to talk more about that, but I'm going to move us ahead one more slide. In Carlton's work and in other settings of coaching, we use assessments and tools to help us to get in touch with our self-development so that we can bring our best self. And without shame, notice our growing edges, places where we're not going to be all things to all people. And so this is one tool, types of multiple intelligences. So in the early 80s, Howard Gardner he set up 8 kinds of multiple intelligences, recognizing that in our schools, our traditional schools are very focused on auditory and visual word-based learning, and sometimes leaves people behind. So our kids that might be diagnosed as ADHD or always listening to the, drumming to a beat of their own drum, their own music in their head, really are people who may learn and express themselves best in alternative ways that are just as valid and just as meaningful and just as needed to our whole collective. Here you'll see a few of those. Is there anyone willing to come off the mic and go around the spectrum here to list these intelligence types? I'd love to have a volunteer. And we can unmute you if you're willing, if you raise your hand. I forgot that you're not able to unmute yourself. All right, I don't want you to get tired of my voice, but here are some of the types of intelligence. And so Ricky notices that he might be more visual, I saw in the chat. And if anyone else is wanting to speak into the space, feel free to raise your hand in the reaction button or in the chat. So here are some of the types of intelligences. Noticing that a ninth one has been added by multiple people. This visual is by Mark Vitale. A friend of mine, Sharon Coons, has listed a different ninth one, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. So the 8 original, I'm going to start down at interpersonal. People who are sensing people's feelings and motives. And then bodily kinesthetic, folks who coordinate mind with body movement. Then linguistic, finding the right words to express what you mean. Intrapersonal is understanding yourself, what you feel and what you want, and also how you connect with other, and so you notice within, whereas the interpersonal is great about the connection and how you notice one another. Spatial is visualizing the world in 3 dimensions, and that could be someone who's like attracted to puzzles, or I know I like organizing the trunk if we're going on a trip, in my car. I can visualize like how it's going to fit together well, and lots of other ways that gift shows up. There's the naturalist, someone who understands living things and reading nature and interconnectedness. Musical folks, discerning sounds and their pitch, tone, rhythm, and timbre. And then the logical, mathematical folks are quantifying things, making hypotheses, proving them. It's oftentimes also called the science and mathematical. And then the 9th one that's been added, some folks have added this tackling, this existential one, tackling the questions of why we live and why we die. Maybe you've heard of not only birth doulas, but also death doulas, people who help bring us into life and purpose, living and dying. And then, as I mentioned earlier, a friend of mine, an author, Sharon Coons, spelled K-U-H-N, has called the 9th intelligence the nurturance one, someone who understands and senses how to nurture one another and community. So that's kind of this blend of intrapersonal and interpersonal, and really giving people a sense of security. So if we go to the next slide, Armstrong.
I was just going to say, Kimberly, that is so important when we first start diving into individuals, for them to have a sense of who they are. They need to be able to understand that makeup of their personality and the type of person they are. It helps them when they're starting to try to get on a success pathway.
For sure. Thank you. Yes, I put up this is the same group, but it's in word form, and I appreciate the way that he made that more succinct, of like recognizing that we're all smart in different ways. And sometimes we can get our confidence shaken if we think that I know Carlton and I were talking about that we're not really big tech people, or, you know, like lots of slides and, you know, like all that kind of stuff is sometimes that's not our top strength. So what do? We ask someone like Maggie, hey, can you make this look pretty? Or can you figure out this tech piece? And so instead of letting those things, those places where we're not as naturally interested or talented, we can sometimes come up with that energy to do what we need to do in an area. But this is where community and collaboration really makes us better people. So we don't all have to be we're better coming with different strengths. I'm gonna have Maggie put in the chat a link for a place where you can do a free assessment of what your kinds of intelligences are. But if you were to just guess by this list, what would you say you are? I'm gonna see what people have put in the chat, if anyone wants to speak that. Carlton, do you mind sharing out what people have said?
Let me see what's coming up in the chat.
Let's see. So far, I see Ricky says that Ricky is visual. So sorry. And then Tamika, interpersonal.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll give you a couple more minutes. Welcome, Gary. We're glad you're in the space. We're talking about multiple intelligences, getting a sense, and know that you're not just one. You are likely more than, you know, that we have different strengths that we bring up at different times and in different settings. So you surely have more than one kind of way that you can show up as your best self as a learner, but also as a nurturer. Thank you.
I see we got a few of them that's interpersonal. I like to be able to see if we can have some participation. Maybe one or two of you all come off and speak up. And when you see yourself as interpersonal, what does that really mean to you? There's about 3 folks I've seen said interpersonal or intrapersonal.
Oh, good. We've got both. Musical, naturalist, nurturance. Yeah. Any volunteers?
Hi, my name is Tamika. I chose interpersonal, and that's because my superpower is people and interactions. So the ability to interact with people is what allows me to convey messages. Also, it makes me a better learner of people and their styles of communication.
Wonderful. Are you a coach is that something that you do?
Actually, it is with Hope for America, yes.
I saw your intro and I was like, hey, you're living your skills. Love it. Thank you so much. Anyone else want to share where you feel like you shine and can show up as your best self as a learner and as someone who's giving? There will be more time to talk in small groups but you're always welcome to pipe in. On the next slide is another tool that we might use, and something Carlton and I discussed is that, you know, an hour and a half is not nearly enough time to really go deep into tools and assessments, but just know that there's multiple ways of continuing this lifelong learning of who we are, how we best show up authentically, genuinely, and with power and confidence. And a tool as a spiritual director that I find really powerful is the Enneagram. Again, there are ways to have free online ways to think about, like, oh, who am I? What does this mean? Lots of great books that are out there. This is older than any of the other typologies or assessments that you've seen. This was, even though it was kind of made before psychology was even a practice, was even a thing, but this ancient typology tells us kind of our chief operating system and how we show up in our strengths, and when we're less steady, or when we're showing up with our shadow side. how does that maybe manifest itself? And so something I like about the Enneagram that like the Myers-Briggs and Gilmore-Fraley and some of those others don't do quite as much is that you can look at these wings. So say you're a person who's identifies as a 1, and this is just one of many, many, many visuals, but you might show up in trying to make things good and right and steady. And in some instances, you're gonna like show up with the best aspects of the number 2 next to you, the wing. Sometimes you're gonna show up maybe with a tendency for kind of the least positive aspects of the number 2. Same with number 9. So anyway, it's a really big topic where there are lots and lots of full weekend kinds of retreats to dig into this, but just wanted to introduce possibly a new tool for self-discovery and helping teams to work with one another so you understand where you come from. Next slide. Actually, I'm going to go back. So sorry. And so I appreciate you all thinking about what your intelligences are, where you might show up, and wanted to assure you before we talk about key 2 and 3 and 4 is you are not meant to be a superhero. None of us are meant to be all things to all people. And so the invitation is just to be ourselves so we don't burn out, so we can keep showing up for one another and for ourselves. I'm going to turn it over to Carlton as we move through the next keys.
Yeah, matter of fact, let's go back if we can to that one where we're stepping up to success. Yeah, I think it's the second one right there. Okay, when we talk about the 4 keys, and you can understand why I wanted to give Kimberly enough time to really dive off into that key 1. We have found that trying to work with individuals, trying to work with organizations, until they really know who they are and what they're made up of, what type of person, that's why it's so difficult sometimes to achieve success, because it's hard for you to get a good, clear vision of where you want to go, how you're going to get there until you know who you are. And they may say, well, I know my name, I know what I've been doing. But when you start stepping towards success and things towards the future, you have to take a little deeper dive. And these tools that Kimberly was sharing, if you take some time, and we have found when we work with individuals with workforce, we try to get them to take a deep dive initially to understand their personality, understand the traits of what they may have been godly given. And that's so important for when you're trying to make the steps to success. Because as you start putting together your goals and then want to have a plan of action to reach your success, you must first start with who are you? What's you made up of? And all of us may be a little different. Just like when we seeing in the chat that people recognize that one may be a little bit more visionary, more interpersonal. There could be some different aspects of you, and we need to know that about ourselves and with others. So we can look at other people when we don't look at them as being something wrong with them because they're different. And that way we can get synergy and we can truly start going down this road of success together. And I want to just you to tap into the title of this whole workshop. This workshop was built about sustainability, being sustainable. What does it take for us to sustain ourselves and the movement that we represent? Or would I say the whole purpose for what we do? And you walk through these steps, you got to get first a good, clear vision. You get clear vision, then you set some goals or you set some direction. And as you set those goals and direction, you got to plan out how you're going to execute that. And it's got to be about action. And this is not no one time. You repeat this over and over. You crystallize your vision. You refine your goals. you relook at your plan of action, and you're continuously on this road of success. Believe me, when you start trying to pull organizations and people together, it's not easy. But no one ever said success was going to be easy. But when you get you a plan and you have an action to it, you can continuously be on the road of success. So when we talk about 4 keys to success, even though we use these directly when we're talking about workforce development, but it's really with anything you do in your life. And so we want to take this time to walk through. You heard step 1 or key 1 was, who am I? The next key is, where do I want to go? Where is it that I really want to go? What do I want to do? Sometimes that can be something like a mystery to people because they just haven't decided what direction they want to go in. So when you really can dig into yourself, and then we've got some other tools that can help you understand what type of pathways match up to your personality, it makes it a little bit easier. But if you don't understand yourself, you don't dig in to understand yourself enough, that next step is difficult because you could chase after something that does not match up to your personality. So we're trying to get individuals to walk through these steps one at a time, really truly understand who you are. 2, where do I want to go? 3, how do I get there? How to actually, okay, I tell you, here's my direction, but how do I get there? Sometimes it takes for you to put together a roadmap because you may have to go through some ups and downs, around some bends, whatever it takes, but you need to have some kind of way to how you're going to get there. So those are the first 3 steps of success. And you really have to have vision, goals, plan of action to reach success. Now, a lot of times I like to be able to be interactive. These groups we have with these trainings are usually small enough that we can get input. So I like folks to be able to come and say, and I'll say that, Kimberly, I see a lot of my teammates on there, so they know about this, but I don't want you to be shy about speaking up. So if anybody want to say anything towards this type of action plan, I'd love to be able to hear so we can have a little interaction from some of the guests. What do you think about this action plan of keys to success? Anybody?
I think it's a very good plan. Hello, my name is Kenyatta Bowman. I just introduced some paperwork to the interim superintendent of the Pontiac School District on different ways of learning and things like that. So having a action plan to set out goals to achieve a certain level of success is very important for self and for children and family. It's a great framework to work through.
I appreciate Ms. Bowman. I think, and if you're talking about doing that with the schools, that is an excellent approach, because the earlier that we can get young kids understand how important it is for them to know who they are, and then to be able to start even as early as elementary school, how do I actually get to where I want to go to? And the K-12 system should be the fundamental background to give any young person a good direction and a good stepping stone to what they want to do once they get out of the 12th grade. So I commend you and appreciate you being here, and we're going to be any kind of help that you need to achieve that with inside the school system. Anybody else want to share anything about these 4 keys?
There's a quote that has long guided me. I just remember when I was going to my college orientation, and that's been more than a couple decades ago. And it was a quote by Frederick Buechner, a theologian, who says, "The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet." And the first time I heard that, I just was like, it was just such a aha of, part of who I am and where I want to go are not just about me, but about that world's deep hunger, and so that I like how these keys to success, start with the interior and then help pave a roadmap, move us towards something with purpose and possibility.
Yeah, that's great. You know, when you start thinking about it, Kimberly, a lot of us don't realize that success is out there. We all talk about it, but how do you actually achieve it, and how do you maintain it? And we found that that key four, when we started talking about costs, that cost factor is almost anything that you might want in life. There's a price you have to pay for it. And that price you have to pay for it, not as always dollars and cents. We found the greatest cost for being successful is your personal commitment. That personal commitment is really going to make the difference whether you are successful and be able to maintain your level of success. You hear about people achieving success, and somehow another, a year or two later, you say, wow, what happened? If you're not committed to the cause, if you're not committed to bettering your best, if you're not committed to being the best authentic you every day, you could be susceptible to fall short of success. But that personal commitment is more important than financial commitment. There are so many opportunities to find finances. So don't think of costs as being dollars and cents all the time. It's the personal commitment and the passion to go with that personal commitment is going to make a world of a difference. And I think Kimberly has some things to add on to that component. And before we go into a little break session, but Kimberly, you'd like to say something to that?
One area of work that I'm really deeply honored to work in is using the principles and practices, the wills and the skills, principles and steps for nonviolent social change based on Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement. And as Carlton and I were talking about the work that we each do, I love how the principles and steps for Kingian nonviolence really works into our interpersonal journeys as well. And so one of the principles in Kingian nonviolence is accept suffering without retaliation for the sake of the cause to achieve a goal. And one of the steps is about personal commitment, just as Carlton was saying. And when we're in Kingian nonviolence, when we talk about accepting suffering without retaliation for the sake of the cause to achieve a goal, it is self-chosen. Like, choosing, maybe it is a financial cost, maybe it's an energy cost or a time cost, and doing really hard work, like some of you in the room are doing environmental work, equity work, environmental justice work. It can be exhausting and depleting. The wins, the big wins for this mammoth issue maybe seem daunting, but instead of this being overwhelming, that when we count the cost to just keep showing up, to be resilient, find our source, and build a broader coalition, a deeper collective, then that suffering, that struggle, whether it's changing policy or getting through to local politicians or changing building codes or working with communities to say, oh, my indoor air quality and my family's well-being, I want to make a better future. All those things can feel like they're really tough work, but the commitment is worth it, and we're seeing the struggle, and we're right here in the midst of these two massive hurricanes. And I notice we've got folks from one coast to the other on this call, and our resilience, our energy, our love and care go to the ends of the earth. We are in this together. So just wanted to encourage you that this commitment is worthwhile, because we as a collective are worth the efforts. We're going to break into small groups now and invite you to explore these keys and your own desires together. So we're going to break you into groups of about 3 or 4. And if you can think about just one thing that you're working on, either intrapersonally or interpersonally. It could be in your workplace, your family, your neighborhood, your community. And then and don't leave because you're scared of like having to talk. It's okay. And you're going to go through these questions. We're going to type them in the chat so that once you're in your breakout rooms, you can still see what are you doing to figure out who you are, where you want to go, what are the tools and resources you need to get there, and are there things that it costs? Who do you need to bring along with you to make this possible? And I wrote in there, it takes commitment, collaboration, and confidence without coercion. Some of us are going to have been given undue privilege, and we might come with too much confidence, so we need to dial back the coercion. And some of us have not been given as much privilege, and so we may need to step up our confidence to keep showing up in our full selves, knowing that our value and worth are important here. So just wanted to explain those 3 C's, those 4 C's that I spelled out there. Any questions before we go into breakout rooms? We're going to have about 10 to 12 minutes for sharing, so that'll be about 3 to 4 minutes per person, depending on your group size. All right, Maggie's going to send us into rooms. Carlton and I will pop into your rooms and see if we can be a support. But pick one thing, intrapersonal or in your world, that you'd like to work on and apply these steps.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and open those rooms up. If anyone is having any like tech issues, issues coming off of mute, I do believe everyone has the ability to unmute themselves now. But if not, or if you're having any other troubles, just go ahead and use that chat to message me and I can come in and help you out. So I'm gonna open these up and then we'll all join back together in, yeah, let's do like 10, 11 minutes. I think that sounds good. All right. Okay, those should be open now. Everyone should see a prompt on your screen to go into those breakout rooms. All right, Kenyatta, do you see that prompt to go to your breakout room? Is it coming up for you? Well, hey Zoe, welcome. My name is Maggie. I'm with Midwest BDC. We're actually in breakout rooms right now, kind of doing some like small group discussion. So there are some questions I'll put in the chat and I'll go ahead and send you to one of those breakout rooms and feel free to jump in or just listen and then you can obviously join in when we come back to the main room if that sounds good.
Okay. Do you know, will there be a recording available of this? Like, would it be easier for me to just watch that at a later time, or what do you think?
Yeah, we do. So we recorded the first half. I think it would totally make sense to jump in. It's a pretty small group, so we've been pretty interactive. So I feel like it would still make sense. But if you want to go back and review the full thing, we'll have it up on our YouTube in like the next day or so.
Okay. Okay, cool. I'll go into a breakout room now then. Okay.
Okay, cool. I'll put you in one just a second.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, welcome back in from those breakouts. All right, looks like folks are starting to come back into the main room here. Oh, you're muted, Carlton. I can see you, but I can't hear you.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. We got everybody back?
Looks like it.
Some people in our group didn't get to share yet, so I would completely open the floor of reflection for anyone who is about ready to step into the space and share. But we had some good conversation. How about the other group? Do you have some good conversation in there? Would anyone like to share an example of where they're going, what they need, what does it cost? It's a quiet group.
Yeah, so everybody kind of laid back and I want to share too much. I'll say this much. I had Kimberly, the other Kimberly in my Waller in my session with me. And as an educator, she was talking about how the struggle really is to try to get the message out to a wide variety of folks and the commitment towards, making it that everybody could at least understand what's being shared. Because sometimes we can talk over people, under people, and they don't really get the message. So we really, truly got to find ways to share even sustainability, talk about decarbonization. We got to find a way to be able to share with people that they get the message. Because if they don't get the message, that's almost like not knowing who you are. So if I can't even understand what you're talking about, what you're saying, it's hard for me to start talking about, I'm going to say where we're going and how we get there. So if you can relate that to saying whatever we do, it has to be relatable so people understand what's being shared with them. And Kimberly, I know you may have something to kind of tie into that as far as what you were sharing earlier.
Well, I see that Ricky wrote in the chat, we are influencers and actually, I mean, Ricky, do you want to read what you wrote? Because I don't want you to be tired of my voice. Unmute you.
You're on mute right now, Ricky. Can you come off mute?
Let's see.
There you go. You're off mute now.
The thing about it is, as we know from what both all of social media and all these things tell us, we are influencers, and a lot of times it's great collaborating with like-minded people, but I think it's also even stronger when we have those with different mindsets, that we can at least get to a point of both resolution and of benefit to most or all. And with those 4 keys, some of that starts with you and then extends out to the people that you're working with in order to get to those end objectives. And that's what's really important, as well as create a lot of possibilities.
Mm-hmm. I agree, Ricky. Ricky has been collaborating with us for years, and so he's well-versed in coaching and mentoring. So I take to heart what he's saying, because it's very true. Anybody else want to share anything else related to any of the 4 keys, or anything that came out of your session? Feel free to come off mute and share with the group for a minute anything that you may have discussed in your session.
I was just thinking, I'll come off real quickly. Ricky's point that really makes a lot of sense to me as I think about coalition work too, because as we're talking about these 4 keys, I think something we talk about at Midwest BDC is a lot is that a lot of us have a shared, end goal, a shared where we're going, but then how we want to get there is different. So that's how you get that kind of not, oh, sometimes it's like a little bit of tension or a little bit of different priorities, but we still have this shared goal and shared vision. And so I think as I'm thinking about these 4 keys for myself, I'm also thinking about how these 4 keys work for a group and how that's like, similar but can be different too. And I think it's just a really good framework for both of those individual and then also like collective topics.
Well, Maggie, I'm glad you shared that, because where we want to move in before we end up is, how do we talk about sustaining our movement? The movement of Midwest, movement of what we all need to do individually. How do you sustain it to make sure it can last to get to the finish line? Because you can start a race, but that's not important. It's how you finish. So how do we sustain our movement? How do we sustain ourselves? Keep enough energy, keep enough focus. Those things are really important. And Kimberly, you want to share a couple of things in that regard?
Yeah, Maggie, I'm going to have you put on the next piece. As I've long been kind of an integrator, and I saw when this group was raising up their intelligences and the ways they show up in the world, I was thinking of the ways that we are integrators. And so as a person who cares deeply about people and cares deeply about sustainability of Earth, I was thinking about how we bring our solar power, like how we bring our essence and show up. And sometimes I feel like, we're when we're with family and friends and doing the things we love, we're vivacious and we're show up as whole people. And then when we go to do our work, we somehow go into these like unhealthy community norms. Next slide. And those norms are not normal. So as I think about coal burning plants and some of the things that are extraction based, finite resources, we as a culture mimic the way we've been doing energy and environment. We've been treating the environment as disposable, as something that's just going to be there for us anytime, any way that we treat it. And we do that in our corporate culture too, right? We treat people like they're disposable, like they're going to keep showing up for minimum wage, that they're going to give more and be producers all the time without being sustained as humans. And so a huge piece of us being genuine and authentic is bringing our joy and our resilience and our energy so that we free other people to be seen and to show up as their authentic, valued selves. We can't expect that we have people be like machines and just produce and produce and produce without being poured into, without being nourished. And so I saw one of our participants loves organic gardening. Sometimes we have to give up things. We have to let go of the stuff that doesn't work or that pollutes to make room for, and the compost. We need the stuff that's dying. Let's let it die and create something new life, like compost is nourishing soil. And so let's not keep modeling after colonial systems of doing business as usual, and instead be countercultural and move out of this depleted, burnt out way of being into a resilient, renewable way. So I'm going to have us move to the next slide, but if you can see my little screen, I've got my Renewable Energy Day shirt for Indiana. And, you know, we can rise each morning and think about the sun that's new every day and that we have a new start every day. So how can we bring a little renewable energy, bring our spark, our essence to all the work that we're doing, whether it's with youth and schools, whether it's, you know, we have someone who's a community advocate, we have someone that's working on environment, folks here that are empowering and like helping guide and navigate our young people into their power and purpose. And so you're doing countercultural things to be renewable, to tap into the resources that can keep being generative rather than exploitive. And so instead of being part of a system that leads to burnout on the inside or polluting our health and well-being, we are the leaders who can show up as empowering people. Something I say to my middle schooler is sometimes hurting people hurt people, and empowered people empower people. And so as we show up out of our multiple intelligences, out of our confidence and our power and our purpose, we are secure enough to let those around us also shine. We build strength and resilience, and that creates more creativity, generativity, and authenticity. So one thing I would, what are some things that you would invite us to release, either as a people or as a culture? What are things that pollute, are extra, you know, like are just extracting like coal from our earth, that don't create a resiliency or renewable energy? Anyone working with things that wear you down, burn you out, socially or personally?
You know what you made me think about, Kimberly, when you were saying that is that sometimes we have to really understand how negative thinking works against us when we're trying to create a renewable sense of being. You know, you have sometimes the ability to look at the glass of water as being half empty or half full. But if you continuously put in your mind, I'm moving forward, I'm renewing myself daily, and I'm looking forward to great opportunities and have a very positive optimism, it rubs off on other people. And if we can continuously to kind of keep that kind of mindset, we then are now regenerating energy for ourselves and for others. And I think that's what I hear what Kimberly is sharing with us is how we need to renew our own personal energy in our daily steps towards whatever we do. So when we look at this solar plan, this talk about solar, wind, what about our solar? What about our wind, our power and energy inside us to be renewed daily? That's what I'm feeling, Kimberly.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
And then Maggie, you know, talks about we're not meant to be perfect. You know, the expectations of perfection. We can't be perfect all the time. And I said the same thing in you know, that as we're going to keep doing an internal and collective work, but we're going to do it imperfectly and with intention. And I love that just as we show up with our joy and our skills, like Carlton was saying, we can all show up vulnerably and imperfectly, which also allows other people to not be afraid of just showing up and not try to be superheroes or try to be perfect. So great. Any other ways that you would say we want to start a revolution of a countercultural way of being renewable and sustainable?
Yeah, this is Gary Ringer, Detroit Eco Environmental Solutions. I think a lot of times unresolved trauma manifests its way within folks when they come to the table from a deficit perspective. Like instead of, you know, we can always talk about who's doing this and it's like, you know, from a coalition perspective, I'm sure it's somebody that's doing it. But right here in this space, like, let's put all that to the side. And from an asset-based perspective, let's talk about how we are moving forward, how we are capitalizing on what the work that's currently in front of us. as compared to what's not being done. Let's talk about what is being done and how we can collectively utilize those past harms, those past traumas to fuel our mission and our movement forward.
Yes. Thank you, Gary. That's awesome.
One term that Gary, that I really appreciate you sharing is from an asset-based perspective. And I hope everybody take a deep dive at what he's saying there. When you start talking about your assets, you talking about your liabilities, let's talk about your assets. And so if we move from an asset perspective, what I think Gary is sharing, we can move more collectively and be more sustainable.
Yeah. And celebrate the small wins. You know, along the way, this is tough work that we're all doing, but we can keep lifting up the small wins, and that's going to build more energy. So we bring both our known history, the traumas, the deficits, but we can also celebrate the little wins along the way. Next slide, Maggie. So sustaining ourselves and generating energy for our movement, from the smallest little tiny shell to the vastness of the universe, we see spirals, and the spiral is something that, for me, connects to our thousands of years of history, from Anastasi's doing the spiral within the sun to around the world. Cultures have used this imagery, and something that we may not see. And my original picture with the universe, you could see that the spiral was going multiple directions, but these spirals symbolically, when they are going clockwise, are about growth and generative creativity, moving forward. And when they go counterclockwise, it's this moving inward, but also an invitation to release. And so if you are working on whatever you're working on towards the next possibility, I invite you to be in balance. The things that we're not always called to be more and more and more. Sometimes we need to let go of that which is holding us back, release. Maybe it's stuff on your calendar because we can't keep up with the speed of light. So I invite you to consider ways that you can sustain yourself by releasing things that are trying to push you down, or tie your schedule up too much, and so that you can be more present to growth and generativity. Next slide. We are releasing and redesigning as needed to show up in your strengths and authenticity. And as Marianne Williamson, it's a familiar quote that you may know. Our deepest fear isn't that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And as we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So we're going to have another question before we hop off of here. What tools do you have? What resources do you seek to be sustained? And wanted to invite you into this space to share a little from your personal life. What are the things that you have to offer in the world? How can you sustain yourself from burnout or hopelessness? How can you influence and guide your community or team to be resilient and impactful?
I'm gonna kick this off, and I want people to join in. One of the things, the most powerful things that we were able to tap into is our slogan of being powered by passion. When you are powered by something that you have a passion for, you'll be surprised your sustainability kicks into a whole nother gear, because you just enjoy each day doing what you do. You think about it, something you feel real passionate about it, nothing can stop you. And so I would just say, Kimberly, for me, the tool that I use is my passion that I have for what I do, how I treat people, and what I look forward to every day. Anybody else? Don't be shy. Like Lisa put something in the chat. My relationship building skills have kept me sustained. Okay. Okay. Appreciate that, Lisa. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Lisa. That's something that this pandemic, time has reminded me to keep investing in my relationships that are life-giving, and that it's not all about work and pushing forward. And so that resonates with me. Thank you.
Anybody else want to share anything, tools they use for sustainability?
Yeah, I like to throw out there in conjunction with being a lifelong learner. I show up if it's going on, if it's what I'm interested in, I show up. And I think more times than not, even if it takes a while, when folks see that you committed to something, it speaks to not only your character, but it speaks to the steadfast mission that you've seen within the work that they may be doing. Because it's organizations that I've supported that I may not have even brought an issue to the forefront, but I know if I bring something up, they've seen me enough times to where they're gonna show up. So I think just make it a point to be there and be somebody that people can depend on. I think that really holds true within relationship building and within coalition building, within movement building, within the work in general. Just show up.
Well, that's powerful, Gary. That's powerful right there, because a lot of times people don't realize it. Being there and showing up and being present, being vocal, being willing to go ahead and speak your piece. It's not necessarily you want to dominate the conversation or you got something that you think is more important than any and everybody else, but you at least show up. Because right now, the day and time, sometimes, just like right now, people die for the right to vote, and people won't even show up at the polls. Now, the good side is I'm going to thank all the ones who do, but we got to encourage everybody to show up and show out.
To add to the conversation, just reading over the question about how I sustain myself and avoid burnout and hopelessness, I do believe that and just to piggyback on that relationship building, community is very important, and surrounding yourself with a network of people that can keep that positive uptick, that can keep you moving forward, even if you have to flex or bend a little to navigate the changes that have come about, be it with COVID or the elections and just the temperament of what's going on in the community. Having a network of people who can keep that positivity flowing is, to me, even if it's employers, employees, even your children, just having positive reinforcement is one of the keys to maintaining your sustainability and keeping away from the burnout and that hopelessness. So just to add.
I would like to add that I agree with everything that everyone said, especially Lisa. And with that concern in regards to communicating, I would say that the most important factor that I bring in is the listening. The fact that you listen to people. If you can have all the great understanding of self, great keys, but if you're not listening to the needs of the people, then your retort is not going to be effective. It may be ingenious, but yet it will not be effective. So listening is what I bring. And when listening, then you can then go into action. And so I consider myself a doer, someone who get things done. And in coaching, it's more important to find out what it is they need and then execute that.
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. Anybody else? I know Kimberly, before you jump back in there, I took notes on those three comments that I really heard. One, Gary talking about showing up, Lisa talking about the network, how important that network is, and then Tamika talk about the listening skill. And that's very true. It's very true. You can mess around and be in a coalition. If you don't take time to listen to what others are saying, it's hard for us to work together collectively. So I commend you for bringing that point up, because sometimes we can be all talking, but what about the chance to listen?
Yes, love it. Was there anyone else that wanted to speak in the space? This is good stuff. I had a couple quotes there, that remind me, to come back to that multiple intelligences. Martin Luther said, "I have so much to do today that I'm going to need to spend 3 hours and he said in prayer, in order to get it all done." What is it that sometimes when there's so much pressure, that you can do to nurture yourself, to make sure that you can actually show up? I heard in Lisa's comments, that if we don't take care of ourselves, that we may not be able to show up as positively and powerfully. And so sometimes it's when we feel like we can't take that time is when we most need to take a walk in nature, to meditate or get centered, to nurture a relationship so that you can keep showing up powerfully for other folks.
Yeah, Lisa's point about the network, even inside the coalition, we're going to have conflict. You'll have differences of opinion, but you do need to have a network of folks who you feel some commonality and that you can get rejuvenated. So I agree with you, Lisa, that you've got to have that circle of folks around you that you feel can rejuvenate each of us. And you should always seek to have a network that can keep you rejuvenated and fresh for the long run. But I know as we start getting close to the 3:30 time frame, we want to start wrapping up a little bit, Kimberly. So let's keep it moving. Appreciate all those comments.
Yeah. Next, so those were our questions, and I think our next slide is our wrap up. We are happy to continue to learn from you, to be in communication and conversation with you. Here are our emails and a little bit more of the ways that we can be a resource if you'd like. And we're so grateful that you made time for yourself and made time for each other so that we could learn from one another. And I see in the chat there's also a way to copy and paste in case you want to be in touch. We are happy to be a resource if you'd like to be in contact. And any last thoughts, any last words of encouragement that you want to offer?
I want to say in wrapping up, I appreciate all those folks who I had kind of reached out and said, please come out and take a little time to sit in this. I thank you all for coming out, showing up, like Gary said. I thank you for at least extending yourself. We know sometimes in the business of your day, you say, oh, I don't know if I got time. But just that topic of sustaining yourself and our movement, it should ring out loud and clear that we got to take time and focus and get some steps and get some keys. So I believe if you take these keys to heart, we do at the CarNav Group, we do workforce development work, which is not necessarily just always getting people jobs, but it's getting them and understanding what tools they need to be successful for a career. So feel free to reach out to me anytime. And as you see, Kimberly has a wealth of knowledge about relationships, spiritual direction, holistic health. You know, it's a key component of workforce development, because until we can get that centered, full person at the table, it's hard to get them in tune to educating them and developing them to be true to themselves first. So I thank everybody for showing up, showing out, being here.
Can I ask a question before we log off?
Yeah. Sure.
Is there a resource, and excuse me, my camera's off, but is there a resource that can be tapped into on for encouraging moments that is, I want to say like culturally responsive, like, you know, and not something that is completely like everything is just, you know, Mary Poppins roses, but like that's realistic and yet encouraging to be able to go back to or to share with others that are in, you know, this along this journey, either by any kind of media, literature, or, you know, digital.
Yes. I love your question, because yeah, if something's too Mary Poppins,
Yeah,
Mary Poppins, yeah, that it feels like it glosses over the reality of just how hard this work, you know, the work that we're in, is. And one, I would say listening circles, or I do group spiritual direction, but there are ways that you asked for books and other resources, but I'd say finding your people and creating intentional vulnerable space. I don't do well going to too many parties where we're all living on the surface, and or like, you know, kind of the class reunion kind of feel where you feel like you're supposed to be present yourself. There are circles that are crafted to be vulnerable spaces, and out of that comes a lot of strength and resilience, at least for me personally. We can email some resources. I don't know if this is open to anyone in the room. Are there books that you've read lately, or resources?
Let me jump in there. Kimberly, I'm glad that I'm glad you asked that, because it makes me think now maybe we need to have a tool that's on a daily basis. Now, I personally, I'm a committed person to the daily word, and I get inspiration from that each day. But I'm thinking what you're saying, is there any kind of tools we have that can keep people inspired on a regular basis, or something they can dig into? Is that what you're really saying?
Right. I mean, when you just need that extra, because it gets weighty.
Right.
It gets weighty. You know, I appreciate the word. I appreciate Jesus. It's just that sometimes I just need something to grab onto, and I don't want to call somebody and share with them my pain because they're in pain.
Yeah.
So I would like something that's, you know, kind of not a tangible resource. And we don't have to answer the question now. I mean, maybe you can email it out to participants after some reflection, but that's just something I know that I would appreciate in my life. Today's a good day, but next week, you know, the struggle can be strong sometimes, and I might need to tap into something. But thank you for taking the question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was thinking about a local author here in Fort Wayne, China Presley, who did a great journal, and it's got a question each for each page. And I like that her, that those questions are real. They connect with our hearts. So
we want to thank everybody for coming up, showing out. And Maggie, you want to kind of pull us on out of it? Because I know it's getting closer to 3:30 time frame.
Looks like we're right on time. I love that. It almost never happens to be like perfect start, perfect end, but look at us. So yeah, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who was able to join today. We will have a follow-up email coming out probably in the next 2 or 3 days with a copy of the slides, the recording, and then any of those other resources. Carlton and Kimberly, I'll get with you guys and see if we have any other resources to include in that for folks. I'm also going to drop in the chat our events page on the website. So we do have a couple more trainings coming up this month, focusing on similar topics. So we have one on the MES principles in grassroots organizing. That'll be on Halloween, actually. And then the week before, I will be leading a training with Stephanie Bowman of Mothers Out Front, specifically talking about how we communicate in coalition and how we kind of understand our own communication styles, the communication styles of others, and bridge those gaps. So if you're interested in some of the skills-based work we did today, I feel like that would be a really good training to check out as well. And as always, look into becoming a member of Midwest BDC. If this is your first time in one of our spaces, we'd love to have you. And yeah, thank you to Carlton and Kimberly for the great presentation today. And thanks to everyone who joined.
Thank you.
Thank
I would
you.
encourage anybody who's not a member of Midwest to consider it. It's a great place for knowledge, insight, and especially as we move forward in a collective manner. Appreciate everybody who showed up and showed out.
Thank you so much for having this event. This was great, you guys.
Okay.
Thanks. It was good meeting everybody.
Okay, same here, Lena.
Take care.
Take care.